Good evening, everybody. I'm Michelle Lang with Operation Honor Rural Salutes. I am the founder and president, and we are a nonprofit that serves rural veterans and their families. So that's a little bit unique. I don't, to my knowledge, know that there are any other nonprofits right now that are really digging in and focusing on the rural veteran space. And we do that because I'm from a rural area in Pennsylvania. My husband is as well, and our story is a lot like many other people's. So he transitioned out of the military in 2019. Long story short, we couldn't find the support that we needed when we were at our home base. And that was pretty frightening for us and our family. And so we did something about it. He actually got back into the military because civilian life just wasn't his thing. So we are down here at Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg. And that is when in 2021, we decided to start a nonprofit. At the time, it was to find all these local resources that anybody can access. They can dig into the resources that are in their backyard and go seek the help that they need instead of relying on larger organizations that might be overwhelmed. They can get help a little bit quicker because that's what I wish we had. And in doing this, we realized we're kind of boiling the ocean. And there are a lot, there's 44,000 veteran focused nonprofits out there. So how do you differentiate? How do you sift through all of them? And how do you make it manageable and digestible for everybody to use and update that and maintain that? And so we're really, thinking how we do this. But the turning point was whenever we hosted a event for rural veterans back in my hometown, and we geared it to rural veterans and rural communities, because in these rural communities, gosh, they're so supportive and they're so appreciative of the military. But what we found is when veterans come home to these rural communities, is really, really isolating. It's not as simple as maybe an urban area where there's veteran meetups or there's, pickup basketball or things like that. In rural areas, there's not much to do. There's not much going on. It's a slower pace of life, and people move there intentionally for that reason. So why can't they move there into these communities that are so super supportive and feel the support? It's an odd thing knowing that you're supported by so many people and feeling so alone and isolated. And that's what a lot of people struggle with. So what we did was completely dug into rural America, rural veterans and their spouses with a long-term vision of supporting them, bringing them resources where they can get, access to entrepreneurship resources, to financial literacy, to get their benefits questions answered, homesteading, holistic therapies, mental health, peer-to-peer, a whole variety of resources that are available to rural veterans and their spouses that they can use to feel supported, to feel empowered to be successful where they're at, and hopefully become, mentors in their community, to become pillars of their community and the change that drives within their community. As many people know, right now, our military is sort of going through, I don't know if you call it a crisis, but people aren't signing up the way they used to. Our recruiting numbers are really, really low. And I don't know, there's a lot of speculation why that is, but the military is really a beautiful place to form friendships, get discipline, get all sorts of leadership skills. I mean, the military really invests in its people, particularly in leadership. And it needs to be a little bit more mentored within these areas like rural America that supports our military, how they can join the military, how they can be examples for the younger generation. So there's a whole lot of factors that we consider going into this nonprofit and the work that we're doing. And one of the ways that we are working on doing that is partnering with other organizations. We fully recognize that this work can't be done alone. And like I said, there's 44,000 nonprofits out there that are working towards very similar missions. And recently I read, I don't want to get the statistic wrong, but it's the nonprofit sector, I think, is the third largest sector driving change in America, behind manufacturing and something else. But anyway, the nonprofit sector is huge. It's a big deal. It's filling a lot of gaps. And we're trying to fill the rural veteran gap because we believe that it's been very overlooked. And rural veterans, they really, I believe, they're the heart and soul of America. Rural America is very precious to me. That's where I think some of the best people come from. And it can be really intimidating to go into these areas whenever you are not rural yourself, or you maybe look a little too fancy for the area, or I don't know. Rural America has a special place in my heart just because they're going to tell you like it is. And every place is a little bit different, right? Like here, we live in North Carolina, and I've definitely got the oh, bless your heart, which means something totally different in rural Pennsylvania. But that's okay. They're just salt of the earth people, and because they are do-it-yourselfers and self-sufficient doesn't mean that they don't need help and support. As a matter of fact, they are the ones that grasp at the support and resources, and they utilize them if they know that they're available. But a lot of rural America doesn't have the funding to really reach these areas the way that they deserve. America is a huge place. So what are we, Operation Honor Roll Salute, trying to do about that? How are we tackling this problem? And the answer is pretty simple. It's with partnerships, very intentional collaborations, and vetting of resources. So our first pillar is our resources. We want to make sure that we have good vetted resources on our site that we can direct people to, and not an overwhelming amount, because that's the issue. Think about whenever you are really, really stressed out and you need help, how difficult it is to sift through links and links and links of different resources without, any guidance. So, our first pillar is guiding people to these resources and letting them know that they're there. Our third pillar is, our second pillar is our online community. So we've created the first ever rural veteran online community. And what that is you create an account. It's very similar to a Facebook group. And you create an account, you join, and then you can join the general forum. And then from there, there's subject matter experts in the group that can talk to you about, real estate, VA loans, homesteading, exercise and nutrition, your benefits. So a variety of different things that people may not think to ask about, but um, bringing that awareness and then having answers from experts, that's a pretty big deal. And then we will be hosting live webinars in there as well. The third pillar is our in-person events, where we basically throw celebrations for rural veterans and their families and the surrounding community, to be able to learn how to better support rural veterans, have rural veterans see that there's support available to them, and just have a good time. We bring in musicians, bands, speakers, food trucks, veteran resources, craft vendors. We do a date night and a golf tournament. So there's a lot going on, but we really want to show our appreciation for rural veterans and their families and the communities that support them. In a little bit, oh, there's Nick. Can you hear me, Nick? Okay, Nick is coming on here in a second. He is our board, one of our newest board members. There you go. How are you?
I made it. Had to find a new had to find a new location. So I'm live here in Pinehurst. I'm sitting outside the amazing Harris Teeter. Good thing about the South is it's never too cold. So thanks for
Oh,
having me.
that's true. Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, for those who don't know, this is okay. So, I am so glad that I got your pronunciation right, because that was not on my bingo card there. Nick Vandre, right? Am I saying that
Got
correctly?
it. Yeah, you got it.
Oh, okay. It's way cooler than what I thought. He is one of our newest board members, which never thought to ask how your name was pronounced. So shame on me for that. But
Okay.
he is a newly 20-year retired Army veteran out of North Carolina. And your superpower is driving strategic partnerships and innovations. Nick has a really creative way of thinking, and I would say like an out of the box thinker. You just see things in a different way, and I really appreciate that about you. That's really your strength. So we are very, very glad to have you at Operation Honor Rural Salute.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. It's an amazing opportunity. You had amazing vision. And I also grew up in a rural community in southeast Wisconsin, and so rural is what I know, and even now live in a rural community. I think it's the best kept secret in America, honestly. But we need to find ways to better support those people living in those communities, and I think this nonprofit's the way to do it.
Yeah, rural America is there's definitely like a revitalization that's starting to happen right now. I think, especially with people that, I mean, COVID did a lot for this country, good and bad. But one of the things that I saw come out of that is people looking to move to their own piece of land and kind of get away from people. Cities were feeling a little too people-y, I guess. And all these people are moving to rural America, but they're not rural. And so there's kind of like a cultural mesh that needs to
Mm.
happen in these areas, but it leaves a big opportunity for rural America to blossom. And I think that we can really help be a driver of that with empowering rural veterans to take advantage of all these benefits that are available to them that are going unused.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's as you pointed out, I think one of the biggest contributing factors I can bring to the board is the collaboration piece. And when you look at rural America, well, you look at the people, right? It's really about you know taking I think a different approach to an old problem, and trying to find new pathways. And in the digital age that we live in, we're more connected than ever. And I think we just need to think differently about the problem. So I often like to think of people as puzzle pieces, right? Little multi-dimensional puzzle pieces as we do problems. And each person deserves their own approach. And I think in what the nonprofits doing and the other organizations that are collaborating with us, we'll be able to find a convenient solution.
Yeah. I mean, collaboration is going to be a big piece of this to be able to, because one nonprofit, I mean, we can do it all, but we have to have help, right? So collaboration is kind of the key to do it because there's so many great resources out there that are doing really phenomenal work in the mental health space. In the, I mean, mental health is the biggest one, but I think that's the most underutilized tool for a lot of these rural veterans because they don't know that it's available. There's just so much that they don't know that's available. So, how do you envision collaborating with these different partners, community partners, whether it's government organizations, other nonprofits, to kind of drive change?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about alignment, right? So every organization, every individual has their own interests, right? Their own aim points, and it's really about being able to break down those barriers and build new bridges. And I know that sounds quite altruistic, but it's true. And in the day that the data shows, and in the world that we live in, that it's about alignment. And I like to think of it, this is like Pareto's principle, right? It's the 20% of builders that will support the 80% of buyers, and the door is always open, I like to say. So if you're one of the organizations out there listening today, whether you're working in academia, industry, capital, or government, reach out to us. We're looking for more partnerships. We're looking for ways to break down those barriers, find interchanges and intersections around old problems. And I think it's our relentless pursuit and our promise to uh, the rural communities in America, that there's people out here who care. And so if you find yourself kind of in that same cycle, creating those same limitations, allow others to help you, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes the hardest thing to do is ask. But I've learned that when you allow yourself that uh, that permission, there's solutions out there.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the most unexpected joys that I've found doing this is showing other nonprofit organizations or other companies that are not rural minded, that's not where their focus is, how they can impact rural America with what they're already doing if we just, shift it a little bit. Because the light bulbs start to come on. What I want to do with this is be able to drive traffic to these other nonprofits or other organizations that are already doing the good work. But I mean, we all work together, and we're not a mental health resource. We're not, real estate agents. We're not all these things, but we can drive rural veterans there. We can support them with community, with information, and then we can show these other corporations and nonprofits how they can support rural America, which is really supporting America. And that's what a lot of people want to do. Um, and that's just been really exciting to me because some people are just like, what do I have to do with rural America? I'm like, well, more than you think. Here's what we can do to just maybe change your messaging a little bit or change your programs a little bit. And that's been super fun for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest differentiators, I like to say that here we are in 2025, there's a lot of changes going on. Oftentimes we move so quickly, we lose sight of the bigger picture of what we're trying to do. And you have to really apply an empathetic mindset to think of, how is what you're doing as an individual organization trying to help, in this, particularly in the rural community, right? And what could you do to help other organizations around you, because honestly, it's a bigger metric than your own that we need to start thinking about together.
Hmm. And a lot of people think, why should I help rural America? And I mean, the answer is there's just so much untapped potential there. So why would you not want to? I mean, our country was built on rural America, literally. That's where we sprung from. And I love the people. I really do. They're my kind of people, and they're not for. It's just a different way of life. It's not for everybody, but it is for a lot of people, and a lot of people are really, really just racing towards that. But I've also talked to a lot of veterans who say, I really would love a piece of land, but I'm worried about my VA appointments, and I'm worried about this and that. And it's like, well, don't like, how can we help? Have you heard of community care? VA has telehealth. What are you lacking right now? Because I'm sure we can connect you with it, and you can get what you want where you want. And being able to give people their dream, I guess, is super rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a two-way street too. When I think about this and I think about, you know, the care maybe that, my dad didn't get that he needed, right? In where we lived out in the country. Um, there's a value and a voice that we represent to the people. But I think there's also an opportunity where organizations like ours also can help government connect who may feel um isolated from rural America as well. Like you said, some people who live in cities, some you know government agencies may feel that they don't understand their customer, if you will. And so how do you enhance value? It's some organizations like ours, nonprofits that serve that a very functional role in assisting, not only government but also um, our community. So but it's also to be protected, I think, too. I know I love rural America. I think it's, like I said, I think it's the best secret in America. Um, and I don't want it to turn into a big city, right? So I don't want all the land to be bought up, I don't want the culture to change because it's different. It's absolutely different.
Yeah, and that's what makes it special. And I think there's certain qualities and characteristics about people that live in rural America, and I think that's what makes it tough in some cases. Uh, and I talk to a lot of people who have tried to market to rural America, and they're just like, "Wow, it's just different. Like it's different." And yeah, if you're not from that area, um, you are kind of like an outsider, and you really have to meet this demographic where they're at, and then you couple that with being a veteran or a military family, and there's another layer of like, what are you trying to sell me here? What do you like? Skepticism, right? And so how do you meet them where they're at, and how do you start building trust between them and the organizations that are trying to serve them? And I think the answer is really simple: is just meet them where they're at, literally show up and say, here, these are the things that are available to you. Go do it yourself, because they want to do it themselves, and that's totally fine. But if they don't know what's available, then nothing's ever going to get done. And you just kind of like fall into that hopelessness feeling. I also talk to a lot of people that they just don't have people to relate to in their area, you
Mm.
know? And they don't even know, like at our event, last year now in June, some people didn't even know that their neighbors were veterans. And so there's just this really type of keep to yourself and keep your head down and work type of mindset, which is fine. But I do know that they are very resilient, and uh, I want to say stubbornness, but I know that's a negative word. Their determination is an asset if they just know what's available to them.
I agree. Um, you know, I think there's an expectation when resources are put through certain channels that they reach everybody, and I think we need to. I think we need to do a better job as well, understanding that there's a lot that these I know I'm just going to speak personally. There's a lot that our family went through, and still go through, and sometimes we create our own limitations, and the organizations like ours and others, I think keeping that empathetic mind and understanding that of why we're doing what we do and the appreciation it brings, that we need to continue to um, try try to reach them through other channels and continue to measure and manage the process and improve upon it, right? There's no end state, right? This is never finished business. So it's just a way of living, and ensuring that we're continuing to improve. And I think that would probably be one of the greatest pieces of work for the nonprofit, is to figure out how do we measure our impact, and then how do we provide transparency reporting to all that.
Yeah, we'll talk more after this break coming up.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
G Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Okay, we are back. I have the memory of a goldfish, so I can't even remember where we left off. I'm burnt out from the day. But one of my personal goals for this year specifically is to create better partnerships with the VA. And I know that's a touchy subject with a lot of rural veterans, but I think there's a lot of factors that we could help eliminate in feeling that kind of sometimes wishy-washy, sometimes negative. Because think about it, whenever you're driving an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours to get to your doctor's appointment, yeah, I mean, you're probably not too thrilled anyway. And then the first person that might be having a bad day to give you, attitude or whatever, that's going to set you off for your whole appointment. So it's just very easy to fall into like this negative thinking about the VA. But I have seen such really empathy and willingness to do the work from them and the people inside that organization. And what I would love is to be able to help them build that rapport with rural America and help them reach rural veterans a little bit better and kind of, in a way, help them find the pulse and so they can serve that community a little bit better. And I think that there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I think there is, and I think I would challenge, right? I would challenge our listeners to use the heck out of us, right? Like, we're here for you. Like, let us be your voice. Let us do the work. Like, give us your needs. Tell us what's not happening, right? Allow us to look at the data and build that bridge for you, right? I mean, that's one of my promises, in 25. One of my goals is to help the organization. And this goes to partnership, right? Not just partnership to government or to these functional areas supporting rural veterans in rural America, but promise and partnership to those military connected community members as well, to tell us what you need, tell us how we can improve and what we can do for you, and we'll do it. Like, we're here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was just thinking yesterday, actually, when my husband Chris got out of the military the first time, and he had a negative experience at the VA, we never said anything. We never sought out a patient advocate or said, "Hey, is this correct?" We never questioned it. And some of that I think is kind of like ingrained in that military mindset. So there's some untethering that you have to do there with the military mindset and the civilian mindset. But it could have been very different. That person could have just been having a bad day. So really shame on me, because I should have been the advocate in that situation, whereas just, question, because I have heard so many positive stories lately about just individual care in the VA, but then I've got to know some people working at the VA and inside at different areas, and boy, they care so much. And I really want to help bridge that gap, because there's a definite disconnect there. And I think whenever you're not part of a community, the VA can't be everywhere, right? But if you're not part of a community, there's that disconnect in communication, that personal feel that particularly rural veterans, I mean, I won't speak to them all, but being from a rural community, I know they need to talk to somebody in person. And so how can we help create that thread of trust in order for people to use their benefits more? Because there's a crazy high, people think there's two narratives, right? That veterans are taking advantage of these benefits and things like that. And then what the data shows really is that no, if people don't start using these benefits, they're going to start going away because people aren't enrolling in them. So how can we help do that and build that thread of trust? That way they want to use them, because this is there's so many incredible tools that are available for veterans, and healthcare is one of them.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, I think sometimes we overthink things, right? Like, there's all these benefits, and I think people want to know that they're real, right? They want to know they're not wasting their time. They want to know that you can get your hopes up, because it is a good thing. And so I think some ideas would be adding more transparency to these processes, allowing these communities, right? Like we're all from, well, now you and I are from them, like still live in them. Um, we're a bit tribal. We trust our neighbors, right? We don't necessarily trust some of these other organizations, even though they're offering things. So, it goes a long way to have that local advocacy and that transparency that, like, yep, these are the vetted solutions. They work. You need to use them. This is how you use them. And just, I don't want to oversimplify it, but you're just getting real, right? Just getting real as people and connecting and continuing to push this. The ones I worry about are the ones that don't want to use their voice, right? Who need it the most. They
Mhm.
always are the ones who are um always thinking of others but themselves, right? Like that inner dialogue. Those are the folks that I really look to reach and trying to figure that out. So if anyone has ideas, like, please reach out to us, because those are the people.
Yeah, and that's really funny because I've had conversations with a couple people this week where same thing. Everybody thinks that their problems are their problems and they're the only ones feeling that way, and maybe they shouldn't feel that way because, you know, uh, okay, related to the military, something really bad didn't actually happen to me, but I still feel bad inside. Like I never saw combat, I shouldn't have these problems. I didn't get deployed, I shouldn't have these problems. Um, and they almost need like permission to
Mhm.
heal. And it is just a really, oh, man, I wish I could get all the people I know that have talked to me about this like together in a room and just talk to a large audience, because so many people have this very similar experience that happened, this narrative in their head, like, I didn't get hurt enough to justify my internal struggle. And then they take that home with them. Literally, they take it home to wherever they are, rural America. There's not really counseling there. They take it home with them, um, to their wife or whoever. They're not talking about it because they don't feel worthy of their struggle. And there's a lot of healing internally that needs to be done in order to let their, oh, what is the word I'm looking for? I don't know. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done internally that happens, at yourself, within your marriage, within your employer, that starts the change. And whenever you feel like you're so alone and you don't have these resources and you don't have the support and you don't have somebody, casually that you can mention this to, you do feel so super alone. And then you're never going to reach out for help. And so that's the biggest thing. I want people to know that there is absolutely help available to you, no matter what stage you're in. Like you don't have to be rock bottom to get help. You can be okay on the outside, not feeling good on the inside to get help. Um, and then feel empowered to start your business, feel empowered to, buy a home. There's so much that sets off the domino effect whenever you start to heal your mental health. But I feel like this population, in general, is more reluctant to do so because of various cultural reasons, and there just doesn't feel like there's support available to them. Does that sound crazy?
No, no, I'm just sitting here listening to you because it resonates so much. Like, and I think there's a lot of people like shaking their head, like, yep, yep. I mean, many of us, doesn't even matter what part of the country you're from. If you're from rural America, like a lot of the same blue collar, you know, country folk all grew up the same. A lot of the same rules, a lot of the same, you know, uh, upbringing has been ingrained in us, which is partially what drove us to, serve our country and continue to serve our communities, but also, you know, as humble as many of them are, um, helping themselves is probably they're the last ones to eat, right? And in respects to mental health and getting the treatments you need, that's really difficult when you've created this story for so long. create this narrative and these limitations to help yourself. You know, it's a tough thing, and knowing too, having dealt with this stuff myself and having come through the other side of it and trusted those resources, it took a team. Like it, and everyone's different. Like, you know, everyone's different, and what science is showing today, on the researching of trauma, post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic growth, it's incredible what we're learning. Like we're just touching the iceberg, like the tip of the iceberg, right? There's so much. And so to anybody out there listening who's battling with this stuff themselves, know a friend, have a family member, doesn't matter, you know, if you're in some traumatic experience, you saw something, you're a part of something, you heard something, whatever, like that's your story. And there's services out there to help you. And so you can't compare. You cannot compare. You just need to, reach out to us, and we'll listen, and we'll help, and we'll connect you, and we won't go away until you're done. And um this is about community. So this, you know, for what it's
Yeah.
worth, I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It does take for the lack of a better phrase, it does take a village to heal. Honestly. I mean, I had to have permission from my friend to say, like, no, Michelle, you don't have to, you can feel resentful, but you're allowed to go get help. Like, it's okay. And whenever you don't have that, then you stay stuck, and you don't have to stay stuck. And there are just so many, there's so many tools available to you. Like, one of my favorite tools is if you are really struggling with PTSD, TBIs, things, of that nature, where you need some more advanced help. I know somebody, he's on our resource list. He's out in Idaho. He will fly you out to his clinic. You stay there for a month and a half, and then you're done. You get treatment, you get hyperbaric oxygen, you get, a whole slew of things. But talking to him, looking him in the eyes and having a conversation with him is just, he is so passionate about helping people heal. Like, he's there with you. He will fight for you. Even if you feel like you can't fight for yourself, he's there for you. And that's the type of people that I want to be able to direct veterans to, like, just people that are so passionate that, gosh, they will do anything to help the cause and let people know that this is out there. I don't know. It's a privilege. And again, I have a lot of people that talk to me about their mental health that they don't mean to talk to me about it, but it just comes out. And so many people share the same stories. And when you're not talking to other people, whenever you're hiding things from your wife or your kids, it still seeps out in other aspects of your life. And it hinders you from reaching out for help. And maybe you're not as successful in business as you want to be. Well, there's resources for that, but your mindset right now is kind of keeping you back. I just learned the other day that the statistic now is 82% of eligible veterans do not use their VA loan.
Mm.
Isn't that crazy?
Do we know why?
I don't know why. I would guess. And I've heard this from other civilian real estate agents. They're not educated themselves. The real estate agents, if you're not near a military installation, they don't know much about the VA loan, and they don't have a lender that they feel like they can go to and get the questions answered. It's a really confusing process to them. Whereas, like, here, Fort Liberty, everybody knows about the VA loan, and
Sure.
real estate agents are really schooled on it. But that was staggering to me, especially because housing is that was the number 2 thing whenever we surveyed rural veterans, is housing was an issue. The lack of affordable houses and the lack of rentals in the area, because rural areas don't really have rentals.
Yep. No, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, again, the defense market, the DoD, there's no transparency, right? Like, whether it's us talking about rural veterans today, or tomorrow talking about some new technology, or some commercial company wanting to help bring their life-saving medical device into the, into the DoD. Um, you know, I think there will be in the future, but there's just not a lot of transparency or literacy or education wrapped around, how do you, what is this thing, right? Like you can go to college and get an MBA on entrepreneurship, or, corporate business models, but you can't figure out how to navigate, you know, medical or business or anything related in the DoD. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I was looking for resources for Chris, I felt so stupid because I'm like, I've literally written research papers. Okay.
Mhm,
Why can I not find a stinking therapist that works with
mhm,
veterans in my area? Like, what is going
mhm,
on? Oh my gosh. I was overwhelmed by it, by the whole situation that we were going through. And then overwhelmed by searching through psychologytoday.com and looking through everybody's profile. And then I ended up selecting the wrong one who had no idea how to relate to the veteran experience. And I actually ended up making it worse for him. But
mhm.
that was a really, really, really scary time. And I just felt so helpless and so dumb because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, you're not alone. I mean that's the difficult part, right? And then, so then you find that therapist, and then we all know that, like, how that goes, right? Like it's like dating. Like you're like, I don't know if this is gonna work or not, right? And
Yeah.
then you're like, screw it, I'm done. I don't want to do this. Like, I'm fine. I'll figure it out, right? Um, yeah, I think DoD's getting smarter with some of their marketing, their messaging, their understanding that, the adoption of commercial practices, best practices when it comes to reaching your customer and thinking more. I think the entrepreneurial mindset is what I have in mind. Because it's so focused on the customer, right? It's like, or you don't do well. Um, Now where I think the challenge is like DoD plays with funny money, right? It's like they're not responsible. Like the person who's executing some of this stuff isn't responsible for the overall growth of the quote unquote company, being the DoD. And so you lose that connective tissue of like, okay, every dollar matters, right? Every customer matters, and that's tough. And so I'm not saying privatize DoD, but you know, adopting some of those best practices are really important, I think.
Yeah, so let me ask you this then. How do you see, if anybody's listening, how would Operation Honor Roll Salute help use this money and use other people's resources in order to serve rural America? And because I want everybody to win, right? Like I want the person that's helping us help them. I want them to win. So how can we be sort of the vehicle for change with these strategic partnerships?
It's a great question. It's a great question. You know, um, as taking it from the customer perspective and understanding the problem, right? And the value that these other organizations can bring, to the DoD, but also to and the VA, to service the shortcomings, right? And challenges. I think that's the most important part, is understanding. If we think of this whole thing, I often talk about this functional flywheel, right? But if you think about the whole spectrum of, you have this customer, if you will, who has a problem. They have multiple problems and sometimes hard to connect to. Getting that data back is so important for the policymakers, right? Who are trying to make informed decisions. I believe that they're absolutely wanting to do the best thing possible, but you know, they don't always have. I think the biggest challenge in having empathy for the DoD or for the VA is that they don't always have the agility that the commercial market has to respond to their customer. And so when they are when that information is getting to them, sometimes it might be outdated, right? We don't know. And so I think building, like going back to the bridge building, right? Thinking about pathway development and not just about solutions and problems. I mean, I think that's where it's at. It's collaboration, being able to shortcut or shrink the game that we've been playing for so long and take a different approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Streamline it. Yeah. I don't know.
We,
This is where every time I talk to you, my wheels just really start turning, and
yeah,
I just think
yeah,
wow. I'm really excited about 2025. Honestly, there's so much potential right now, and I'm really excited about what we're doing. And of course, I love our mission, and uh, I'm very, very excited for what 2025 is going to bring. And also, Nick and I and the Operation Honor Royal Salute team, we are throwing a Operation Honor event at the end of this year. So that's something new that we're adding to the schedule. So last year we did one. This year on the calendar we have two, one in PA, one in North Carolina. And I think that is just it's such an incredible experience, these events, to be able to connect rural veterans with these smaller nonprofits in their area, and even national ones that just really, really care, and then watch them take advantage, doesn't sound right, but really like dig in and use their services to help themselves. Because I'm telling you, this community, this demographic specifically of veterans, and maybe it's just my love for rural people, but they're just do-it-yourselfers. And whenever they're tenacious, right? So whenever they get a hold of something, their drive is just going to take them and see it through. Like my dad was a farmer, and his family, he comes from a line of farmers, and they just get it done, and they just help themselves, and they learn, they do, and they do more. And I really want to see them do more for themselves in order to help themselves grow and thrive, and then help their families, and also the spouses. Like I'm a spouse myself. There's tools available for spouses. I want to see them win too. And they're often, in the background, kind of holding up the house with sticks, trying to make it all work. But even in rural America, there's resources for spouses that they can utilize and take advantage of, and absolutely grow and thrive. So I'm really looking forward to showcasing this and reaching into more areas of rural America.
absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting year. Looking forward to putting more information out on the website, getting other community members involved. We'll be reaching out, across North Carolina and PA to hopefully form some new partnerships. And it's I get it. It's not it. Trust takes time, and I encourage everyone to reach out to us to help us create this connected community, right? And bring this mission to life. Yeah,
Yeah.
would you want to, Michelle, you want to tell us a little bit about last year's event?
Yeah. So it was essentially the third iteration of an event that we have done in the past, but last year we did it just focused on rural veterans, rural America. And the goal was to celebrate and connect rural veterans and their families with resources and fun, and just really uplift them. The other side of that was to bring in the community that is so supportive of their veterans and show them actionable ways that they can support the veteran community in their area. And what we found out is that it really works. So we brought in veteran resources, craft vendors, musicians, bands, speakers. We had date nights. We brought in, veterans to speak about their experience in a Freedom First speaker panel, and then our golf tournament too. But what we found from that is people wanted to feel recognized and seen and supported, and they did. And then they were able to get the support they needed from their resources. The really cool thing too was that once the community was aware of all the support and help that was available, they started reaching out to me, saying, you know, my son needs this help. Do you know anything? My nephew, blah, blah, blah. Whereas before they didn't have a good point of contact to even ask these questions, or, you know, they didn't know what they didn't know. So it really, really was a beautiful way to bring the whole community together, civilian and veteran community, and just help them have fun and thrive. I love that. I'm so excited to do 2 more events this year.
Love that.
But we have about a minute left. So I really, really appreciate you braving the cold for our chat today.
Yeah. Can you see the screen shaking? My hand was shaking. I'm like,
Oh my gosh. That's
was
I mean, it's like a cold spell. But if anybody out there wants to check us out, our website is ohruralsalute.org. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Facebook, Operation Honor Rural Salute, Instagram, OH Rural Salute, LinkedIn, Operation Honor Rural Salute. Nick and I are both on LinkedIn, and get on our mailing list to stay up to date with any information, and especially our upcoming events. So we are looking forward to meeting more people and making these partnerships to make big things happen for rural veterans this year.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. December is National Blood Donor, Glaucoma Awareness, and Cervical Health Awareness Month. I am your host, U.S. Army flight surgeon and Iraq combat medic, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, MD, retired. And today we have a panelist that's really going to give us a insight into what's going on in California right now. Our hearts, our emotions go out for the people who are suffering there, for the people who've been lost in those fires, and then for those people who are still trying to recover from it. Harold Turner is a U.S. Army veteran and a member of NAMI Urban Los Angeles. Harold is a retired information technology professional with more than 35 years of experience working with Fortune 500 organizations. He has provided technical management and direction in support of major infrastructure projects in such diverse industries as financial services, information technologies, and healthcare. Harold has been a contributing member of the National Alliance on Mental Illness since 2007. He is now the executive director of NAMI Urban Los Angeles. He has also served on the NAMI California Board of Directors. He was appointed as a commissioner and served a 5-year term on the Los Angeles County Mental Health Commission. Today, we're going to have a discussion about the indirect effects of the aftermath on Los Angeles residents from wildfires. I remember watching the things on the news and, the updates about the fires. And it's like, the effects of a fire are not over when the flames are extinguished. These people are going to be facing, ongoing issues. And I know Harold has been, intimately involved in that, looking at the people and figuring out, what other things are happening in this aftermath. So welcome, Harold. It's really good to have you, and thank you for your service to start with.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
Okay. So why don't you lead off the discussion about, what are these indirect effects that you were mentioning that people are going to be facing in the aftermath of the fires? And I know they're still raging now. The fires still outbreaking in different areas, a little bit north of the area that you're talking about with Passage, within those areas. So why don't you give us an overview of what you've been seeing and what you're experiencing and thinking about?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Actually, this whole event kind of caught us off guard, although fires are nothing new to Southern California. But it seems that the magnitude has been increasing over the years. So there's quite a bit of work to do as far as working with our county emergency management systems and others, because we kind of have, cyclical catastrophes. Right now, it's not so much. We got rain in the forecast for this weekend. There's no vegetation to hold all of that land in place. Many of the places you've seen on TV, particularly around, Malibu and Topanga Canyon. So, a lot of that mud and rocks will come sliding down onto the roadways, making them virtually impassable. And not to mention, being able to get to schools and such things, or get emergency vehicles in and out of there. So trying to take advantage of this small bit of relief that we're in right now and to prepare for that, to put barriers up where we can to stop the effects of landslides and mudslides. So it's been rough. A lot of areas, a lot of people have been affected. Immediately after the fires, we were really concerned about air quality. Air quality was really poor and such. As a matter of fact, I was having some work done on my house and had to stop a couple of days. Not because anything was happening, in my backyard, but the air quality was just too bad, to have people working outside. So we're trying to use some of the lessons we learned during the COVID pandemic to apply to this situation, so people can protect themselves as best they can.
Yeah, because you're talking about that. I'm an internist, so I'm a physician, but I also I've had two residencies: internal medicine and occupational environmental medicine. So
Yeah.
toxicology is one of the big areas we're involved in. And when I was in the military, I was dealing a lot with the sea burning issues. It's chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and high yield explosive issues. And some of the toxins that can be released from a fire like this, because it's electronics going up, it's man-made mineral fibers that are parts of construction of buildings, it's plastics, it's rubber, fuels,
Yeah.
you name it. Yeah,
That's a lot of the conversations going on
Mhm.
right now. Of course, you had a lot of people who lost their homes and stuff, and they're anxious to try to get in to sift through the debris and what's left, to see if there's anything salvageable or anything, value or sentimental value, but that they can save. But they still aren't allowed to go in at this moment, because they're afraid that it may be toxic in there. A lot of asbestos and lead and
Yeah.
all that stuff's still laying out there undisturbed. You go in and you stir it up, then that's when the real issue pops up. So in this instance, a lot of people are anxious, but still you try to kind of protect them from themselves, till you can ensure that the area is safe. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
and
back.
those things are really yes, yeah, those things are really important because you can have years down the road effects from inhaling different fumes. So you're talking about effects on your heart and your lungs.
Yeah.
All the organs of your body really. You have metals that are in the air as well. So
Yeah.
people really need to seek health care. And some people are covered, some people are not.
Yeah.
So it needs to be a concerted effort to make sure that the health of the people who are there are maintained. Some people have diabetes and already have congestive heart failure, have had a heart attack, or up in the years, the seniors 90, in the 80s and 90s, and they're in a pretty bad environment. Uh, the one thing I do want to say is that there've been a lot of different stories, thrown around by different geopolitical groups, but the amount of work that people are doing there, the people who are actually being affected by this and what they're doing to try to help themselves, the firefighters, the medical personnel, the public health departments, all those things are really powerful, positive things that people can hold on to. And so that people don't have to feel like they're alone in this, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and there are a lot, no one's unaffected, here in the Los Angeles area. You heard about, the Eden fires up around Altadena, California, near Pasadena, and that's uh, historically Black area that's been that way for many, many years.
Mhm.
And they've been so badly affected by this. It's incredible. So we're not there, just even here, a gardener came out and he told me he'd lost over about 14 properties, in the Palisades area where he was doing work and, had people working and crews that, the structures are just no longer there.
Wow. Yeah, so I mean, even the businesses are not there, right? I mean, those
Yeah,
have been,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Schools are very badly affected.
Mhm.
Uh, some of them are still closed. Some of them are in cleanup mode. It's just a matter of trying to, they go in and they find all this ash and dust and stuff, and that has to be analyzed to see, when it is really actually safe, to go back there, if at all. So it's quite a task, and so no one's unaffected, regardless of what your situation is.
Yeah, because even churches and that, synagogues and mosques, they have been affected as well. And usually that's the places you try to run to, when you really have a deeply emotional, impacting situation. And and I can see that being really difficult. I mean, I can't even imagine what you feel when you go through that. I had responded to Hurricane Katrina and Rita and I remember General Honore had made this comment. Someone was saying, well, why are you handing the babies to the people in the helicopters and separating from the families? And he said, and the children, he said, this is a disaster. Let me tell you something. You don't know where you are if you're asking me that question. And they would rather have their children saved than them to be, standing here with, and leave their children next to their side in the middle of a disaster. And so, people have to step back for a second and make sure that they understand the purpose of emergency responders and help and assist them, and to make sure they're doing, that we can do everything we can to help with that situation. And there are going to be a lot of mental health issues that are going to be really need a lot of attention. And then maybe you could talk a little bit about the insurance industry too, because that's been talked about a lot, whether you have house and, fire insurance, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I had to learn firsthand about that a few years back, and actually, I think, they've been doing a pretty good job of getting where I was just listening to a local radio station here this morning, and they were handing out some really good advice to homeowners, about how to approach these insurance situations. Because, I, in fact, thought I had an insurance policy, and turns out I had 3 insurance policies, and each one had to be settled individually on its own. You have the structural coverage, then you have the additional living expense that's going to cover you up to the limits of your policy in that area. So an area which I had thought that was the one area I should have looked at, before disaster struck, but not so much. But that's really it, the structures, additional living expense, and contents. In a case like this, there's a lot of people you worry, but may have trouble making that case if all of their documentation has been lost in the fire. So
yeah. So I mean, that gives a really good thing, because first thing I thought about was, where are my documents and what would happen, because I live in Illinois right now and in Tinley Park, and that there we are starting to become part of Tornado Alley. So tornadoes have been going through, and I'm saying, what have I done to prepare myself? And even if I have a home fire, should I be putting them on disk, or giving the family members a copy on a thumb drive or something like that? But but that's something that I think we need to start thinking about, because we're moving into a time frame where this global warming has been devastating. It's as a matter of fact, back in 2013, you had over about almost 9,000 total wildfire incidents, and about 601,000 acres were burned. But when you go to 2020, that was 4,300,000 acres. So the frequency of these fires is increasing. It's outside of the normal time frame of what you would consider fire season, right? It's happening throughout the year. And and we can't say that this is not happening. We can't ignore it and say, oh, it's just a normal weather pattern of the earth over millenniums. No, the science has already shown over and over and over again. Wake up. this is something that we need to be paying attention to, in construction. And I know you dealt a lot with infrastructure, with IT, and, in the multiple different areas, in finance and all that. But, if we start to think about rebuilding, and I know it's kind of early to talk about rebuilding, but we need to have a different view when we go back in about how to construct homes and make sure that they are safe, from situations like this.
Yeah, I'd say, you have to always be thinking about those things. Because, of course, business and for certain have to think about it. And, you got to think about how, what happens, if you are, struck by a hurricane or fire or whatever it is, how do you relocate? What does business resumption planning look like? How do you get back online and provide your service or whatever it is you're doing as a business? It's you have to constantly plan for the worst. You hope for the best, but you plan for the worst. That's and the same applies to our personal lives and personal property. You have to plan for it. You may have to move a lot, and it's not just another thing here. It's not just LA that's been hit. It's the area. I was listening to earlier from Las Vegas. About 40% of the people in Las Vegas came from LA. There's, they look at it now where to go. What do they do with people who have to seek living accommodation somewhere else, perhaps outside of the LA area?
Right.
They become, how are they accommodated? It's tough.
Yeah. And then people have to, sort of rebuild their lives. But, what has been your experience? Because these fires have occurred, basically every year, right? We know that we're going to have a fire. Since 2013, it's been every year. We have multiple fires, it's anywhere between 7,000 to 9,000 fires. And what do people usually do after these fires? Do they just move, or they try to rebuild, or what's the process that people go through?
Well, it's kind of all over the map, but the first inclination is rebuilding. That may or may not make sense. And if you rebuild, you got to rebuild differently. We have some pretty good, laws around, rebuilding and, and protecting your home against fires and shrubbery control and all that stuff around the home is there, but it just can't keep up. So it's sad, but we have to start thinking differently. We have to think differently about how we inhabit these fire-prone areas. And there has to be different rules of engagement.
Yes.
Live there. If you want to take the chance and live there, there's risks that come for that, and that risk needs to be mitigated up front. Because once it happens, it's too late. It's not only losing your property, but you're putting other people's lives at risk as well.
Yeah, that's really a very, very insightful thing. I love that, with the rules of engagement, for for living there. Because one of the things is that we too often look at things in hindsight and think that nothing's ever going to happen, to us.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves in the middle of something like this. And, I'm hoping that that's taken into account, because when I first started looking at the wildfires, and what was the reports coming out of California, I said, oh, there's a wildfire here. There's two wildfires. Oh, there are three. And then it seems like the entire coast almost it lit up. And I was like, you know what? This is beyond a simple thing that maybe, local government or a mayor could have, contended with. You have 80, 90-mile-an-hour winds, and this is just blowing through. I mean, it was like hills on fire. I've never seen something that massive before.
Yeah, can travel miles and miles. These burning embers. It's like being, those winds come and the winds are warm and gale force. It's like standing in front of a flamethrower.
Wow.
It's amazing, and those embers just can travel miles and miles and miles in that kind of a gale force wind. It's
Wow. See, that's, we just don't think about it that way, because usually, if I think about embers coming from something burning, I think, oh, it's going to be a few feet, or it's going to be, 25 feet, 30 feet, and it's going to fall to the ground. But this is like something that is, someone was mentioning that it looked like almost like standing in hell, because you just saw fire coming from everywhere,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to look at that and a lot, and of course, when these sort of things happen, and there's always concern around what role did the power companies play in it, and it was did they play any role in helping the spread of the fire or being the source of the fire and these types of things that happen. So this really needs to be looked at by experts. And as I say, we can't continue to build the same way and in the same spots using the same rules we have today. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, because that was really interesting, because there were some houses that were not affected by the fire, and the people were intimating, but I'm not sure how true it is, but some of the people in the general media streams, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all that, was saying that, oh, well, these houses were in a different building code, and that they were more fire resistant. And I'm not sure of how true that is, whether that's something that
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it would be, hard to deny that any specific case, how much of a role that played. But yeah, heard a lot of conversation around a lot of people who chose not to evacuate and just stood on their roofs, with a hose, trying to protect it from embers. And some of them did it successfully, but that's highly dangerous.
Yeah.
You just can't rely on that and then say, okay, it didn't work, come get me now. Asking someone else to put their lives in, when you had plenty of warning.
Right.
And there has to be at some point, I'm sure you probably ran into the same Katrina, and a lot of people there doing the same things. It's hard to get people to leave, the things that they value and the places they value, but
yes,
it's not worth dying for.
Yeah, because everything else is replaceable but your life.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, you can always build and rebuild and do things like that. But what can people do? We always say that, well, people can pray for people who are there and that kind of thing, and that has value. I mean, praying for people and getting into your religious institution, whatever that is. But what else can we be doing to help people? Because I see some reputable donation services and things like that online. But what's the answer for us? For people who's watching, because a lot of people want to help.
Yeah. I wish there was one answer, but unfortunately it's not. It's a lot, preparation, is key. Learn about the emergency services in your area. Who is the Office of Emergency Management in my area, and what do they do, and what services do they provide, and how quickly do they provide it? We need to know all of those things. We need to prepare. If you have you or family members who are in need of medications and those kind of things, and you may not have access to them or lose them in the fire. What's the plan for seeing that that's taken care of? It's planning and preparation is the best we can do, at this point. It's certainly it's the best advice I can give, and because it's going to happen again.
Yes.
So we need to be prepared.
Yeah, that's the thing, and it's something that is trying to allude to is like every year we've been having these fires, and it's something that's almost like the new normal, right? Of this is how we are facing things with floods and in the East Coast and snowstorms. We just had a big snowstorm down in Louisiana. Blizzard.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never heard of that before. I think it was the first time they've had a blizzard, so they were looking around going like, what's this stuff? They don't what's coming down. And but the veterans out there too, we need to reach out to our VFW and American Legion posts too, and veterans who are in need, because they were probably hit very hard as well. Most veterans don't really live on this $1 billion salary, right?
Yeah.
And if we can offer them help, because they, protected this country, built this country, right? And we need to make sure veterans are taken care of in the middle of this.
Absolutely. A lot of that's a big, concern here as well. Because Veterans Administration here in Los Angeles, located on the west side, so not very far from the Palisades area over there. But we just we got a whole nother set of issues when we're dealing with veteran affairs in the areas, and housing and all those issues are still been at the forefront of our minds. But we have to think of it too, in terms of catastrophes, to see that our Veterans Administration is prepared, with a viable plan.
Well, we ran out of time, Harold, but I'm going to have you back on, Harold Turner, because I'm glad that you gave this information. I think it's bringing a lot of people some peace in their heart, knowing that people care. So stay with us. We have another episode coming up right after this, and stay with America's Heroes Group. Thank you for your service.
Okay.
Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. December is National Blood Donor Glaucoma Awareness and Cervical Health Awareness Month. I am your host, U.S. Army Flight Surgeon and Iraq Combat Medic, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, MD, retired. And we have a panelist who's really special today. I read an article and it's just astounding. But our panelist is Holly Castle Work, and she is a Health News California healthcare correspondent with the Kaiser Family Foundation, an independent source for health policy research, polling, and news. Today's discussion is going to center around an area, and I had to look up Pasadena, an Ojibwa word meaning crown of the valley. That's where the name came from. But today's discussion, Molly is going to talk about her article that's astounding. She published this on January 21st of 2025. I encourage you to go to the KFF article itself and read, and it's on their website. But amid wildfire trauma, LA County dispatches mental health workers to evacuees. This is really important, that the mental health aspect often is not spoken about, and what people are going through emotionally. Maybe the emotions are shown on TV, but not what are the real impacts. So it's really great to have you on, Molly. Maybe you can
Thank you.
give us an overview of what's going on, what you're seeing, and then your article, delving into some of the aspects of the article. I think it was really well written, and the people that you presented in the article really hit my heart. So, please go ahead and give us an idea of what you're trying to convey to us.
Thank you. Same, essentially. Yes, they also really, I felt their stories when I was hearing them. So I'm a reporter in Los Angeles, and I live, for people who aren't in Los Angeles, I live pretty close to the Eden Fire, which is right near Pasadena, the city that you mentioned. And the day after the wildfire started, I decided to go to the Pasadena evacuation site, because we talked about doing this in the past, like the mental health impacts of wildfires, because everyone talks about the public health impacts, but we weren't hearing as much about the mental health impacts. And especially you're affected in that moment, like in those minutes after wildfire, but then there's also those long-term effects that are not in the news cycle as much. So when the wildfire started in my own city, I was like, I'm going to go to the evacuation site. There were, I think, over a dozen evacuation sites in LA over the past couple of weeks. This was just one of them, and there was over 1,000 people there that night. So that should give you a sense for just how many people were evacuated during these fires. I spoke with a number of people who were evacuated, and they all shared really similar stories, waking up in the middle of the night, seeing flames or ash or embers, and having to leave really quickly, and, grabbing prized possessions, family members, pets, and getting out as quickly as they could. I spoke with one person who he did lose his house, and a few others who didn't know if they'd lost their house, but knew that it was definitely a possibility. And I think what I was most struck by is one of the people that I spoke with was a man named Fernando Ramirez, who is part of the Pasadena Public Health Department. And he is an emergency first responder, and he also provides mental health support.
He's one of my heroes now. So it's a regular article. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was just, same. As soon as I spoke with him, I was like, oh my gosh, he's like the lead in our story, we want him front and center. So he'd already, spent his normal job is he works for the city. He provides support to people who are homeless on the street, often helping them get resources, maybe if they need help getting housing or food or whatever they need. He'd worked a full day, and then after that, he then volunteered to take on a 14-hour shift that night at the evacuation center. So he's working for 22 straight hours. And he said he was just running on a lot of adrenaline, but really like was passionate about being there. But of course, he lives in Los Angeles himself. And he was telling me that as he's driving into work, like he had to pull over on the side of the street and just start crying because he could see people like trying to water the roof of their homes, hoping that that would protect it from the fire. And he just said that, that was really, really heartbreaking to see. So that was what I think we were interested in, is like, obviously this is a thing that's affecting everyone's mental health, but it's like, of course, also affecting the people that are providing the support as well.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really hit me in your article too. It was really well said. And it was, he was sort of running into the fires, running towards the danger. As, police officers do, firemen, military personnel, they run towards the scene of the incident, in shootings in schools, right? You run towards it. But then he said, but then your mental health catches up with you. And that's, that was really, really a good image, of this is, you're running, but you're doing things, but, behind you is that impact of your mental health that's going to catch up with you sooner or later as a responder.
Yeah, we felt the exact same way. That's our last quote in the story, where he's basically saying that he's like running on adrenaline, but then as soon as it's over, that's when the trauma starts to catch up with him. And he made a really interesting point. He's saying that a lot of people in his line of work, well, and everyone, like we all have our own traumas, and being in situations like this can kind of re-trigger it. And so he was just, like he said, he's just running on kind of autopilot, just trying to get things done. But he knows that in a few weeks, this is going to kind of come back to him and he'll process it more. And he was honest. He says, I have a weekly therapy appointment to help me manage those feelings because they can be really hard. He said some of his colleagues, lost homes that day and still came into work. So,
wow, that's really talk about dedication, selfless service. Yeah. And, the human dimension of the mental health and the public health service really struck me too. About the compassion and how you approach someone who's in the middle of a disaster. You were mentioning that as well, that, so I'm struck with this, this disaster. And then someone asked me, well, how are you feeling? What's your mental health? It's like, what? What do you think I'm feeling?
Yeah, like obviously I feel terrible.
Right. It's not, something that's enjoyable right now. And so people may push back, on those services a bit because they need some room to, to sort of understand and, to get to the point of really realizing what happened, that this is, this really is something that, and it may seem unreal to them while it's happening, that they're part of this thing. I've heard a lot of descriptions from people that this was like being in a movie scene and they, one of those volcano movies, or, they just didn't understand, how to equilibrate this in their brains, to figure out what does this mean. But one of the things that you had mentioned is that mental health services, and many times I'm not sure of how much planning goes into that and whether we need to be doing more, because we plan for putting out the fire, but we don't really necessarily plan for the mental health putting out the fires there.
Yeah, exactly. That was something that I definitely talked about with the county mental health department was there that night. And so I was able to speak with the director of the department, Dr. Lisa Wong, and she talked about that a little bit. Like she said, unfortunately, as these wildfires have become more frequent in California, they've learned like more from each wildfire, and they've kind of refined their strategy. And like you said, one of the things they've learned is people don't often want to talk about their mental health on day one. They're in the middle of this crisis, just trying to get through it. But she said they really focus on just like building relationships and making authentic connections with people, so that hopefully, and sharing information. So hopefully they know to reach out to the mental health department in the future, which does have a lot of resources that they can connect people with. So I think that's what to me they seem most concerned about, is that they had a lot of resources to help people, but there wasn't a lot of awareness. So
Yeah. And one of the real things about this too, that since you're talking about that, is that we have a tendency when we see a disaster or a hurricane, a flood, a fire, we have a tendency to think in a monolithic way that everyone's the same. So we don't really take into account that people had mental health issues previously, and that they may have had problems with getting adequate access to care for that. So you have people with anxiety, with depression. You have people with schizophrenia, PTSD from other instances or other things. And an earlier guest I was mentioning about, from 2013 until now, there's been a fire every year. I mean, they're like 8,000 to 9,000 fires reported, and it's throughout the year now. It's not, there's no fire season. It's a fire year.
Yes.
And yeah, and so it's really, when I start looking at that, it seems like there is a need to figure out, who, to have some kind of mental health pathway for people who have substance abuse or suicidal ideation. And I mean, this could push people over the edge, being in a situation like this. So do you think that that's something we need to look at, or have more resources directed towards it? Or
I mean, yeah, I hope so. That's what I would like to see happen. And yeah, you're exactly right that for a lot of people, this can exacerbate, previous health conditions that they had, like exactly like you said, whether it's anxiety, PTSD, etc. Dr. Wong, the county mental health director, told me also, like, I hadn't thought about this, that a lot of people when they're evacuated don't have their medications with them. So, maybe they really need different medications, and so they're not themselves when they're at the evacuation site. So yeah, there's all these underlying things. And there's even research that, like emerging research, is still pretty early, that smoke itself, like inhaling lots of wildfire smoke, that could actually damage your brain and make you at increased risk for anxiety. So there's just, there's all these awful factors that you have to take into consideration.
Because my background is like internal medicine and occupational environmental medicine. So I did a lot with the military as well. Other than private, the general practice and that kind of thing. But the toxicology side of it, these fires are in buildings with asbestos, old buildings with asbestos. And then you have man-made mineral fibers, which may not be any better. We have
Teslas that are burning, and any like electric car, those batteries.
Batteries, yeah, and that's and you start talking about diesel fuel or gasoline in cars, and the smoke from that, from these fires, and then these rubber from the car tires that are burning. I mean, it's a very toxic environment. And if you're not prepared with the right protective gear, the right kind of mask, the firefighters have to really use, sometimes they have to use like self-contained breathing apparatus, to do that, because even a cloth mask or an N95 maybe not be enough, for things to go through.
I've been hearing people need to be wearing hazmat suits if they're like doing debris cleanup.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really dangerous.
Yes, because we don't know
what the long-term effects are going to be either.
That's right. Yeah, because of the lungs, the heart, and if you already have emphysema or asthma, or you had pneumonia and you were just recovering from it, or COVID, and you were just recovering from it, you could be, at increased risk. If you have heart disease or are prone to heart attacks, that kind of thing. Definitely, you are actually in a much higher state of risk. If you swallow them and it goes into your gastrointestinal system, you can metabolize them, and we don't know what the effects are going to be. So those people have to be watched for 10, 20, 30 years. There's a latency period for some, toxins that are out there.
I've been seeing comparisons to 9/11 20 plus years ago. Just like the same thing where I think we didn't know at the time how dangerous it was to be inhaling that air. And
that's a really good comparison. Yeah, because a lot of the firefighters suffered, the consequences of that later. We know.
It's really awful.
Yeah, and then the convention center, because I think they said, you were saying that they had like 13 shelters, and there was the wildfire, and it was like I think 64 square miles were destroyed. I mean, that's huge. I mean, I can't
It's
even
huge.
imagine it. I can't
It's
really visualize it because
And
we
just
don't.
like how big, like exactly as you're saying, like I was at one evacuation site. For context, it's this huge convention center that hosts like conferences and expos.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was filled with over 1,000 people, but there's 13 of those evacuation sites. One thing that was just really cool, not really mental health related, but people have talked about this in LA a lot. It's been incredible seeing the community that is showing up in
Mhm.
LA. Like, just I was there, this was the first night, and there were so many volunteers and so many donations, and people constantly just like circulating with offers of like hot soup or sandwiches or just a listening ear. And Fernando, the worker I spoke with, said they had people showing up with donations like till 2 a.m., at night. And it's just, that's been a really incredible thing to see.
Yeah, and one of the other things too we don't really talk about much, because when we see a fire in one location, uh, like in Pasadena, those people have family members all around the country.
Mhm.
So that's not just affecting them; it's affecting their entire family network. And
Mhm.
people are, so the mental health needs are this wide ranging, and it's wow. I just want to think about scale. It's hard to put your fingers on a scale like this and try to figure out how big is this. When I'm looking at the maps of California and I see fires everywhere, I mean Southern California, I can't even count how many fires there are. Uh,
Yeah. There's
and
another one that popped up today. I don't know if you've seen that already.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you can talk a little bit about that. That was in that Castaic, I think.
Yeah. I don't know the area quite as well, but it's a little
Yeah,
northern LA County.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it just popped up today, but it seems like that's been growing pretty fast, which is scary.
Yeah. They said it was like in 2 hours that thing exploded, basically. But they
Yeah.
it was over. I think it's over Highway 210 that runs up in the northern portion. But this is like 12 miles from LA, downtown LA.
Mhm.
So I'm like, whoa, this is just too much, too
Yeah.
much.
As
Um,
someone who like grew up
and
in Southern California, like you said, I was always used to having a fire season and there being fires in the mountains, but this feels different to me that we're now having fires. Well, not just this year, but
Mhm,
recent years where it's really hitting residential areas. And yeah,
mhm.
and it's happening all year round. It's not just, in the summer and the fall.
Yeah, because one of the things that I also was thinking about, and I had spoken to it a little bit earlier with Harold Taylor, but he's from another region, but he was an IT professional, that kind of thing, about the wildfires. He said that, one of the things is that people's papers, and I saw one thing that just brought me to tears. It was on television, but one of the news channels, and they had one lady who was a writer, and she had all the journals, she had all the scripts from like 3 or 4 major movies that she had written for, it
Yeah.
all gone, all gone. One person with their Olympic medals gone. I mean, I just so it made me start thinking that there has to be a way we need, and me personally, I need to get my paperwork in a secured thing, in an external hard drive, give it to a family member, something, but just to preserve the things that's so important to you, because we're in a time frame right now with this global warming. I'm living in Illinois and in Tinley Park, and we have the potential for tornadoes coming through now. So
Yeah.
the tornadoes alley is expanding, and we're seeing more tornadoes coming further in areas that we didn't see them previously, and we're getting rainstorms and those kinds of things. I mean, in Louisiana, they were on a blizzard watch. I mean, I've never. It's like we're seeing these things over and over again. So I think it needs to be a national preparedness for this, and families need to make sure that wherever people are living, that they have this a connectedness, that they are making sure that they have their information and sharing it, because some of those things are irretrievable. And some people were saying that, put out fires, which can be dangerous sometimes. But the only thing you can't replace in this whole thing is your life. And, so, as long as you're living, you always have a chance for resiliency and coming back. And, but I think that being prepared for this is going to be a real important factor.
Yeah, I think it was a wake-up call for me, like I didn't get ordered to evacuate, but I was in the voluntary evacuation zone, and I did not take the right stuff. And fortunately, my house is okay, but it was a wake-up call that, like, I need to be better prepared, because I did not take any of the important things, like my passport or like important documents, sentimental things, prescriptions. So I hope that yeah, we all can be a little more prepared in the future. But yeah, you never expect this sort of thing to happen in LA.
No. Oh, no. I mean, it's because you can't live in fear every day of your life, right? That, oh, is this today? Is this today? Then you're not living, right? Yeah. You're living in fear.
Yeah,
but,
totally agree.
But having that preparation is really important, and I think that's something that people need to get more in touch with. And so, what else do you think is going on? Have you seen anything else going on as far as the needs of the first responders, or is there something? Because one of the things that you mentioned in the article I thought was really extremely important, and it was Los Angeles County residents in need of support, and call the county's mental health helpline at 1-800-854-7771, and the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. And this is, confidential and free of charge for that 988. So I think that's something that people need to be aware of, and and their family members too, because it may be a cousin of yours that lives in another part of town that was affected, or a sister or brother or an uncle, aunt, grandparent. And that's something that people need to know, that is available for them if they need to, seek help for themselves or for someone else.
Yeah. Thank you for spotlighting that. Yes, that was really, really important. We wanted to make sure that made it in the article, that there are numbers you can call. The number you listed is an LA County helpline, and then 988 is national. So anyone can use that, confidential, free of charge, as you said. I think one thing I've been just learning a lot the past couple of weeks is this is a marathon, not a race. So like we've had it's been incredible seeing how much support LA has gotten, right in the midst of the crisis. What makes me concerned is a lot of these impacts are going to be really long-term, obviously, like mental health, physical, getting homes back, like just rebuilding the city. And so I hope that we can continue to have responders and helpers for the long term.
Yeah, because definitely the effects of a fire are not over when the flames are extinguished. There are multiple implications, down the road that people are going to have to contend with. And, the mental health crisis is one of the issues, but then the physical health crisis too. And, one of the things that in that area where we were talking before about the 64 square miles, you reported 12,300 buildings at least that were destroyed since January 7th. I mean, that's
and it amazing. Might even be more now because we published this last week, so it might have grown. Yeah, it's horrifying, and LA already has, we don't have enough affordable housing already, so it's really concerning what's going to happen. And
yeah, and people have to realize this includes churches, synagogues, mosques. It's schools. It's recreational facilities. It's your homes. It's the businesses. and now businesses are out of business, right? People don't have jobs. This is why I think the nation needs to step up and call in and donate, give something to help this situation. It's almost and it was AccuWeather estimate. You were saying that estimated over $250 billion in economic losses. I mean, that is devastating. So
yeah, it's record breaking too.
right. And if there's anything we can do to help people's physical health and their mental health, is to help by donating and giving support. This is the thing that we, as Americans should be doing. We have a lot of veterans in the area too, VFW posts, and I'm not sure how many of those were involved, as well as American Legion posts. So police officers, firefighters, some may be injured. I don't know what the toll is going to be on them and their ranks and their families, because they're fighting these fires. But we have got to keep them in our, thoughts and prayers, but also on our credit cards. We need to be helping and supporting them in any way we can. And then, so we're, running short on time as usual. Anytime I have the Kaiser Family Foundation, your articles are so powerful. I say we need to have an hour.
Nice. Yeah.
But we need to have an hour. But I was telling people, make sure that you go and read this article. I think it was really well written, and it gets right to the point. Amid wildlife trauma, and LA County dispatches mental health workers to evacuees. Again, it was published on January 21st, 2025. And, this, Molly, this was a really well-written article. People need to read this and understand the human toll, as well as the mental health toll on the people who are there. I haven't seen an article written on that. I've seen, descriptions of a fire, right? Yeah. And that's what we have a tendency to see, and in the media sometimes what leads, that's the old saying that they want to focus on the, big scenes and, but these are human beings, these are people that we are talking about, not numbers and statistics, but human people. Yeah. And again, that suicide crisis lifeline is 988. Then you can also go for the helpline in Los Angeles County by calling 1-800-854-7771. And again, thank you, Holly Castlework. And I'll be reading your articles in the future. We'll be following up with you too.
Thank you.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to America's Heroes Group. I'm Stephanie Collada. I am here as the political veteran, blog I write and represent onto this lovely show. And I'm so excited to be here. I hope everybody is doing okay with the weather going on. I am in wonderful Florida. So the high today was like 44-ish, and it was pretty nice. So I hope everybody is being safe out there with the cold, with the snow, and also with the fires out there in California. I hope you guys are all doing okay. All of our prayers are with you and thoughts. So let's go on. So for this first half hour that I have here, because I will be speaking for an hour, for the first half hour, I'd like to speak about what's been going on this week. This week, of course, has been President Trump's inauguration. As he has boasted, he said that he has 100 executive orders ready to go, and he has been signing a lot of them. There's been, I think they said 2 dozen on the first night, and we have more coming out each day. I am really hopefully waiting for them to come out on the Federal Register. They have been appearing on whitehouse.gov. If you are interested, it should be under the news and announcements on that page. But on the Federal Register, it will be officially inserted there with its own executive order number. So that makes it really official. Those have not been uploaded yet. That might take about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks to get that processed. Because you know what? Completely new administration, new staff, they're hiring in new people. So it's going to take a little bit for everything to be going in. Executive orders are really common when a new president comes in. They basically set the pace of how the rest of the administration is going to go. And sometimes comes into rescinding the orders of the previous presidents. And that has kind of become a tradition after President Trump left his first term, and then President Biden came and rescinded some of President Trump's executive orders. So President Trump decided to rescind President Biden's executive orders that rescinded his. But then he also did a few others. But let's start off with the basis. What's an executive order? It is a constitutional right to the president. It is in with the Constitution in the act that covers the executive branch. It's basically a signed statement about how a president wants the federal government to be managed. They can be instructions to federal agencies or requests for reports. It could be something as simple as declaring a federal holiday for federal employees. So like, for example, before when a Christmas Eve and a Christmas Day was like on a Wednesday and a Thursday, it's been known that a president will probably give them the Friday off as a federal holiday. They'll do that sometimes as a paid holiday pay, so that way they can get an extra day and not have to come back and forth, especially if they don't have the saved up paid leave. So that's a really nice plus. Other executive orders specifically for that has actually impacted the military was actually from, I'm going to blank on his name, but it was also President Harry Truman who signed the executive order that actually desegregated the military, I believe in 1947. And he has signed a couple of other executive orders, like allowing for women in the military to be discharged or allowed to be discharged if they become pregnant or they become a mother by marriage or adoption, and the military took it one step further and made it a mandatory discharge. But that's an executive order. So it's things for them to change policy on and directions towards the federal agencies that they can actually control. There are limits to the powers of executive orders. Both Congress and the courts can potentially block executive orders. There have been illegal challenges that's been based on the argument that the president exceeded his legal authorities. So President Truman tried to seize steel mills during the Korean War, and the U.S. Supreme Court said he lacked the authority to take on private property without authorization from Congress. So he lost that battle. So there's things that can happen that can overturn, rescind, take away an executive order from the president. But that's also the checks and balances that has been put in place in the U.S. Constitution. So, and one of the things that's been really coming out there that President Trump has signed was a hiring freeze and also a return to work executive orders. The hiring freeze, which is not unlike what he's done before. He did that when he came into office back in 2016. And then I believe it was lifted again in 2017. It was lifted again in April. So what he did then, which is similar to what he's doing now, he suspended basically all hiring and freezes. There has been unconfirmed reports that I have seen that the certain federal agencies have actually taken back any offers, job offers that they've already made to the applicants. So they've actually canceled that. Those that had accepted the offer, they've canceled those. So there's been a lot of things that's been going on right now that's been causing a bit of disruption. So we'll see how that one goes. But so this executive order for the hiring freeze is as follows. As part of this freeze, no federal employee position that is vacant at noon on January 20th, 2025 may be filled, or no new position may be created except as otherwise provided for in this memorandum or other applicable law. Except as provided below, this freeze applies to all executive departments and agencies, regardless of the sources of operational or programmatic funding. There is the exception within the hiring of, and nomination of the people within like the White House and those nominations and congressional appointments. That's part of the exception. This order does not apply to military personnel of the armed forces or to positions related to immigration enforcement, national security, or public safety. So those people, those areas are safe for now. Moreover, nothing in this memorandum shall adversely impact the provision of Social Security, Medicare, or veterans benefits. I believe they're talking about the actual pay VA disability benefits, not the health care that they receive. So because there has already been talk and question that they cannot hire doctors, nurses, or any other people that is under the VA Health Administration. I have not received any confirmation that this also applies to the Veterans Benefit Administration, but we will see. So that kind of does impact a lot of veterans right now. In addition, the director of the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, may grant exceptions from this freeze where those exceptions are otherwise necessary. It's very possible once the VA secretary gets his nomination, which should be, the vote should be happening, I believe, in a week or so. It's possible that he could request the exception to be hiring back the, tickle my throat. That they should be hiring, basically giving the exception so they can hire all the medical people that's required to fill those vacancies within the VA. Let's see. Trump also directed the OPM and the Office of Management and Budget to work with the Department of Government Efficiency And that's the new government advisory panel that we've been hearing so much about, that Elon Musk is on, and Ramaswamy had parted from. And they are to submit a plan for reducing the size of federal workforce through the efficiency improvements and attrition. Once the agencies and the DOGE submit their proposal, the hiring freeze will lift, except at the IRS. So a little bit, if you guys remember, the IRS was also given a increase in hiring people. I cannot remember the exact number, but I remember it's in the tens of thousands of IRS agents that were added to a bill, and it was passed, and Biden went to approve them. So they should be hiring, and there was a lot of talk of whether these IRS agents will be going after regular citizens and everything, and it caused a lot of mess. And I remember a lot of that talk happening at Trump rallies. So why does this apply to military and veterans? So one of the biggest things that for military and veterans is the federal employee, the workforce. Veterans receive a veterans preference. So they often get a step higher than most people that do apply. And veterans preference really does help a lot and gives them some extra points when it comes down to the tabulation of how they do the points when you submit your application. And because of that, about 30% of the federal workforce are veterans. And a lot of the military, the U.S. military, is serviced by U.S. Federal employees and also veterans. So this can cause a lot of issues. For those that don't know, federal employees do a lot of assistance in the military, often with logistics, administration, HR, food. It's a lot of things that they do. I mean, just getting an ID card and your medical records, and they hire civilians to run their hospitals majority of the time. There is a good amount of active duty personnel happening, working at an active duty hospital. But there's a lot of people that work there as civilians. They X-ray techs, managing their regular nurses, doing the regular background and management and administration within the hospitals. That's a lot of stuff that could be impacting the U.S. military. So we'll see how this one goes. The hiring freeze also has implications for federal employees working across the country. More than 80% of the federal workforce operates outside of Washington, D.C. area. Currently, federal government employs 2.2 million civil servants between 2019 and 2023. The federal workforce grew to over 140,000 employees, according to data analysis for the Partnership of Public Service. These federal unions, organizations, and some lawmakers have argued that the federal hiring freeze could prevent agencies from delivering mission-critical services to the public. They have said budget limitations already negatively impact the federal workforce and agencies' that ability to carry out their work. So they're already stressed. It's already causing an issue. Some people, like those that work for those from the Partnership of Public Service, i.e. Max Stier, who is the president and the CEO, told reporters last week that the hiring freeze could be poor management for a federal government. He also said, broad hiring freezes run contrary to clear needs of the federal workforce to deliver the kinds of services that the public really wants. If the Trump administration is interested in trying to hold the line on federal hiring, the way to do this is actually to do the hard work of examining where we need fewer people and where we need more. So he's arguing that it can cause a lot of issues just doing a full stop on everybody instead of just looking at everything there to see where people need to go. This can be very complicated because once you hire somebody, it's really difficult to fire them based on needs of the military. It's very difficult to try to let them go, or excuse me, needs of the government, federal government, not military. Used to that term. A lot of people in the active duty are really used to that term. It would actually require a reduction of force. For a lot of times, depending on where you're hired, where you are, a reduction in the manning roster. And a lot of times they have to, if they remove that position, they have to offer that person an alternate location to work. And then often, if it's not local and the only other position is across the country, they often have to pay for their travel and move, which is very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars. So that's more money on the government that could be costing them instead of saving them. So it's a very interesting cost analysis on which way would work. And it could honestly be argued either way. I'll be honest and admit, hiring freeze versus just doing a good, honest review can be really difficult on the results, because you don't know what the results may be. So we'll see how this one goes. Please be mindful out there on what goes on, especially with what's going on with your services that you need. So for the VA, for the military, if your areas that you're trying to receive services and there's a lot of vacancies, I highly recommend that you guys talk to your congresspeople to let them know, because honestly, that is the way for them to find out whether those vacancies need to be filled or not. If they need to be filled and you're seeing hardship for it, call your congressman, call your senator, let them know, hey, I really need nurses, or we really need some help over here, people answering the phones sometimes. So that stuff really does need to be happening. So it can cause a lot of stress. So what was another thing that I have found? There is a survey in 2017 by the National Treasury Employees Union. Majority of federal employees said the hiring freeze led to increasing workloads and worsening of morale. Agencies, including the State Department, also said the hiring freeze had lasting negative effects even years later. I remember the hiring freeze that happened in 2017, and that was pretty darn stressful, especially since I was trying to plan a move across the country and had to wait until that was lifted until I could even move and try to get hired. And mine was a voluntary relocation, so it was on my own budget for my move. And that held that up because it was a hiring action. So even voluntary moves can be affected by this. And that can cause a lot of issues as well, because it would have came to the fact that I would have just quit and not had found another position elsewhere, which can cause increased workloads and, morale issues, a lot of things that could be happening. So the next executive order for me to talk about, it's the return to work executive order. And it's basically the ending of telework and some remote work. I'm still waiting to find more definition on this actual executive order, because there is this one is very brief, very short. It says, heads of all departments and agencies in the executive branch of the government shall, as soon as practicable, take all necessary steps to terminate remote work arrangements and require employees to return to in-person work at their respective duty stations on a full-time basis, provided that the department and agency heads shall make exceptions they deem necessary. This memorandum shall be implemented consistent with applicable law. Now, what do I mean by I'm not sure about the lines and about this with remote work? So, let's go into some of the stuff. So I found this really great article that talks about all of this. So for the background, how many federal employees work remotely? So according to this article, more than 50% of government employees work in person at jobs that require them to be on site each day, according to the American Federation of Government Employees, a labor union representing more than 750,000 federal workers. About 10% of federal personnel have fully remote positions. Excluding fully remote eligible workers who do not have an in-person work site, federal workers are in the office about 79% of their working hours, according to the union. Among the subset of federal workers who telework but not eligible for remote work, about 61% of working hours are spent in person. Will all federal workers have to go back to the office? Here's the thing. Collective bargaining agreements, which are signed when a person is hired, or CBAs, are in place protecting remote work from many branches of the government. The CBAs are legally binding and in effect, this union said. This can cause some issues. I'm expecting something to go through the courts with this because we are already seeing the issue that's going on within the VA of people that are having to come into work that used to telework. There was a lot of doctors and nurses that were able to telework after COVID. And then still after COVID, all of the pandemic issues have been lifted. And the thing is that many of these doctors, mostly mental health, because you don't need to see these person in person, have been taking these appointments in their home, usually a couple of times a week. And that also allows veterans to also do the teleconference and the tele appointments or video appointments, which can cause some issues now because a lot of veterans kind of like the not having to drive in to their appointments. Myself, I suffer from migraines almost every day. When I had my mental health appointments, it was a very difficult thing of whether I think I could survive the pain of my migraine as I drive into work, which can cause additional stress, additional pain, more mental health issues. And it's kind of ironic that a mental health appointment could cause me more mental health pain because of the chronic pain I am experiencing. So to lessen the amount of pain that I am currently in, to also improve my mental health, and then probably talk about things mental health related that's not related to actually the mental health issues I have to going into the appointment, I can improve my mental health overall. I know, crazy, wild thought, but we will see how this goes. We are already seeing the effects. A lot of these people that do telework, they have been actually sharing offices because you don't need a single office for a single person anymore if they only use the office a couple of times a week. So you could share offices and downsize the amount of work or amount of space, but increase the amount of people you hire and people that work there. Now they might be running into a space issue, which has already started to be talked about in many VAs that I've been hearing from several different states. So we will see how this goes. There have been many people that have been concerned with this. So I have a statement that has been released by ranking member Mark Takano. He's the House Representative of California. He's the ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee. He said, the executive orders signed on Inauguration Day include policies that will negatively impact veterans, especially working class veterans. Veterans make up over a third of the federal workforce, and his various EOs, executive orders. President Trump threatens both their jobs and the care and benefits the veterans receive at the VA. Benefits, healthcare benefits is what we're talking about. And also, this could also impact those people that manage the VA disability claims. If VA freezes hiring as mandated in Trump's executive orders, Veterans could face significant wait times for medical appointments and reductions in access to care and benefits. The drafters of these executive orders clearly did not consider the downstream effects of a hiring freeze on the millions of veterans who rely on the VA. President Trump's executive order mandating a return to office will also have a negative impact on the provision of veterans benefits due to the volume of claims processors who were hired in remote roles to implement the largest expansion of benefits eligibility in history under the Honor and PACT Act. Many of the dedicated, highly trained workers who answer the calls of the Veterans Crisis Line may also be facing with losing their remote jobs, and veterans in need of urgent assistance will suffer. Under Schedule F, VA can unilaterally reclassify large numbers of employees, including veteran employees, into a new category with fewer civil service protections, making them easier to remove if they refuse to pledge political allegiance to Trump. If confirmed, I expect that Congressman Collins, though that person that is nominated for the VA secretary, will provide Congress with detailed information about how all the executive orders will be implemented without harm to veterans. So we'll see how this one goes. Speaking on Congressman Collins, he was a congressman for Georgia, for the state of Georgia, and he was also a House representative for the U.S. Congress for Georgia as well. So, among his other goals, Congressman Collins said he will encourage his VA employees to come back to work after Trump signed the executive order on Monday, directing federal employees to return to office. He said, "We're going to encourage them to come back to work. We're going to follow the president's directive on that, and we're going to make sure that we get people in there because at the end of the day, it's about veterans." He noted, however, that there are certain issues surrounding the VA's roughly 470,000 person workforce, about 80% of which are unionized and on contracts. So we'll see how this one goes. There are, from what I can tell, what I have found in my research, that the VA's workforce has about a 10% attrition rate. So they need to hire about 10% back just to maintain the workforce that they already have. 90 days, at least, for the suspension on this workforce that we're expecting, and it could be 4 months because it was 4 months last time, could be a good impact because that's a third to a quarter of the year, and that can cause a lot of issues. So we will see how that goes.
Where voices,
so
information,
we will have a break and we'll come back with a good friend of mine, and we're going to talk about another executive order by President Trump. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll chat later.
Well, market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
G Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. So this is Stephanie Claudia again for America's Heroes Group, and I am very excited to welcome a good friend of mine, John Moses, and it's so weird to say your first name first. So a little bit background, John, or Moses and I know each other because it'll be 18 years this year since we were actually deployed together for Operation Iraqi Freedom to Kuwait. So I'd love to introduce everybody. So John Moses, he is the president and co-founder of MAA and the Massachusetts Afghan Alliance. He's a Sergeant First Class retired, a veteran of the Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, a Hoover Veteran Fellow, executive and co-founder of MAA. And during the Afghan evacuation, he served as an evac fellow, helping 68 Afghans reach the United States, with dozens more following in the years after. John is also the senior local school board member in his 9th year of elected office of the towns of
Chelmsford, Massachusetts.
I apologize. I am a Southerner, and I am sorry about my cat. So welcome, John. How are you doing right now in Massachusetts?
Everything's well. It's great to see you. This is probably the first time we've spoken in 18 years or so.
Voice.
Right. I think it's amazing how long those connections last, right? So we knew each other a long time ago. And I think you're retired, and I'm also retired. I retired as an E7 back in 2019. So it's great to be here, and I appreciate the time.
No problem. Yep. I retired the same year, E7 as well. So we're here. I brought you on so we can talk about the executive order that actually suspended the Afghan refugee program, actually all refugee program. Yeah. So can you introduce us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background on it first. So Massachusetts Afghan Alliance. So when we helped people out through the evacuation, after we saw a lot of different types of landings for Afghans, right? And the resettlement process was confusing, getting people out. And so mostly veterans, diplomats, a lot of civilians that have worked with Afghans in Afghanistan came together over the past 4 years since the collapse, 3.5 years, to really help Afghans both resettle and get out of places like Pakistan. We've supported all kinds of people. So for the refugee class, right now, the executive order that's come out is the U.S. REP has been suspended. So who does that affect, right? So we've been helping these. There are other refugees out there. This is going to affect all refugee classes. I'm speaking specifically how it affects the 1,660 people that were due to come out. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of different statuses in all of this. Essentially, it boils down to if you have to come in as a refugee, there are no flights for you, and they are canceled. Now, the thing about these particular 1,660 is they've already been vetted. A lot of them are actually being supported by something called a private resettlement group, which is essentially a group of people that raise a ton of money. They find housing, so they're not a burden on the community, because that's a lot of the issues they have there. So these people were set up. They had housing. They had sponsors. Some of them are unaccompanied minors, and some of them are the sons of service members, or the sons and daughters of service members. So,
oh goodness, okay,
yeah. So, but in short, So just in terms of the EO, though, it is a legitimate EO. The effect was immediate. They canceled the flights immediately. There are a ton of people fighting right now in the background. Afghan evac is one of the big orgs fighting for them. We're trying to get to Republican congressmen and women that served like we did. And but it has had a dramatic effect on families. And I'll pause there. I'm sure you have some questions. So otherwise, I'll just keep going.
Keep going. You're good. This is great. There's been a lot of great information on this, because this is something that's not a big topic that happens on America's Heroes Group, because we do specifically stay on veterans benefits or things like that, benefits towards the military. But this is something that has been a really big focus of veterans, because we've served with these people while we were in times of war.
Yeah. Well, the moral injury of the evacuation, I mean, it all really started there. A lot of us really were spurred into motion by like a big PTSD reaction, right? Stress, go back into battle mode, get on the phone in your kitchen and try to save people. Mm-hmm. And essentially, some of us have now put our lives into it, right? I co-founded an organization with an Afghan woman called Massachusetts Afghan Alliance, and I am with Afghans all the time. They are part of my support structure. They're people that I really care about. And specifically, we have what are called reunification cases that are something I put a lot of focus into, right? There are some Afghans, for example, we have a person in my town who was separated at Abbey Gate. So essentially him and his son went one direction when things blew up. Mom, everybody else another direction. They come to the United States expecting to be reunited. They didn't ask to come to the United States, right? So these people fall under this 1,660 people, right? These people they're canceling right now, and under the refugee system, now that they're going to shut that down, they also cannot reunify with their families, and they've already been separated for over 3 years. So we have fought through Congress, through the Senate, we have fought through the executive branch for these families, and now just today I had to have a phone call with a 17-year-old kid that started high school in America as an Afghan, and tell him that he's got at least 4 months before we find out what happens to his family. So how they're going to get here. And a lot of these families on the other side, and there are dozens of these families in Massachusetts alone, and they're all over the country.
Yes. How long does the process usually take for these people?
The reunification cases, so one of the things that's interesting is the government doesn't have the ability to tell you how long things will take. So we never thought that you would set, so reunification cases generally outside of the Afghan world take a really long time. And that's what a lot of people say. Well, it's fair. They got to be in the line. And I understand that. But also we didn't spend 20 years in the Congo. So we know them, right? We know their families, and half of their families now are here. And in some of these cases, it's really not just traumatic for the service member. And if you want to talk, I mean, I have an active PTSD rating. I've done significant therapy after, and so have a lot of us really done a lot of therapy after what happened in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
And collapse, like watching your war end and all the things you care about. And it's just the trauma has actually spreads out into the community, right? So you have volunteers, you have, some 70-year-old woman that didn't go to Afghanistan helping an Afghan that's like, my family isn't here. So the EOs are tough. The 1660 that got canceled, and the other refugees. There's some other EOs that come out. We track them pretty closely. This does real damage to our community. It does real damage to people. A lot of these people are sponsored by veterans like us. They are, if you assist, there's a couple things that have come out of this. These are publishable. This is not political. Depending on how much you help Afghans, and if you end up helping somebody they deem illegal or not, there's some real unclarity, but they're talking about being able to take away 501c3 status. So I think for us as operators, though, as people that are trying to help, we have to focus on the mission in front of us, right? That are people here. Make sure they do all the right things. Make sure they have the paperwork. Make sure they're informed and have education on what to do if ICE, has questions, right? Because these people have been through a process, they've been vetted, and they are generally, a lot of them, again, supported, especially Afghans, but that's my thing.
It's okay. You can speak just for Afghans because that's a really big thing right now, and a lot of veterans are tied directly to that. So it's okay for us to focus on that, even though this EO does, is a compass to all refugee programs. So it's okay. So there's a few things that I've seen already that's been coming out online that is kind of like misinformation or maybe disinformation. And I wanted to ask your side on this. For some of these Afghans that are trying to be part of the program, are they still in Afghanistan, and are the Taliban allowing them to leave for this refugee program?
Yeah, so the refugees, there's a couple different programs. So SIVs, fortunately, have not been affected yet, right? So SIVs are in a process. There's a legal path for them to come to the United States. Flights are still moving, right? Not SIVs. The flights. Special immigrant visas. So anybody that, I got to watch the jargon. Special immigrant visas. So anybody that worked with us in Afghanistan, same thing in Iraq, they could apply after they had a certain set of requirements. They had to have security. They had... The vetting is actually very difficult for SIV. That's why I think it's still active. So those people, I want to give hope that those are still moving. They're still getting notifications and they're still flying. Refugees do remain in Afghanistan. They remain in Pakistan. The ones in Pakistan are really in danger. There are some in other states. I tend to focus, most of my focus was on Afghanistan and Pakistan, but there are people that specialize in Iran. There are people that specialize in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan and all these different places. But refugees are by nature stateless. They don't have a country, and there's no representative country in Afghanistan. So any one of those are affected and can no longer fly just based on the rules as they're given. So.
Okay.
No matter what the situation is, right? This is blanket. It doesn't matter what, how sick your parents are, or, how much in danger you are. None of that is in a factor right now. It's a simple binary choice. Right now, the answer is no, we are not going to take refugees. So Afghan or otherwise.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. That is so stressful too, on top of everything. How often are veterans sponsors?
I've sponsored a family. I know another veteran, Jess, helped sponsor a family out of Pakistan. She was a highly educated woman. She now lives in Massachusetts. She had a master's degree. She had done all this work. Veterans do it almost all the time. And actually, the government, over the past 3 years, was trying to really move to this model. So if a veteran actually was on a Welcome Corps team, which is a group of people, they would actually give them like $2,500 from a grant, right? So you could actually help kind of build up the pipeline. So yeah, veterans are in all the time. And in the families we don't necessarily sponsor directly, we're always doing kind of advice and consent and talking to people and, showing them, connecting to other people. But veterans are incredibly heavily involved in this movement and have been. A lot of us have been in it since the beginning. I got my phone call. I received my calling, so to say, on August 16th, 2021. And it was my interpreter and was like, bro, I need your help. And so a lot of us now, this is the mission. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, it does. It does. Because that kind of calling does help a lot of people that do get impacted with moral injury. And I can see a lot of veterans. I mean, my own calling was actually tied in with Vanessa Guillen with that. And that's how I found myself where I am now. So I understand how that goes with moral injury. So I could see how veterans can find themselves part of the calling and part of the sponsorship as well. So if veterans do become a sponsor, do they have to actually know the person that wants to, they have to directly know the person that wants to apply for it?
There are two types of sponsorships. So you can actually, there's a lot of details to it, but essentially most veterans sponsor someone they know. And then in that case, you have to raise most of the money. If you are willing to sponsor a family you don't know. So for us, it's Afghans, right? So we want to know the family. But there was also another way you could do it where you'd say, I'll accept the family. We'll raise the money and then they will do actually, they don't have to raise the money. That was the benefit to not knowing. So there was two ways they could fund. You could self-fund, and I could reach out to a friend and put them through the process and get them through the vetting and get them here. And I have a family right down the street. That's the one I sponsored, lives in Lowell, Massachusetts, one town over.
I know that town at least.
Yeah, there you go. And so, yeah, I think there were different ways you could do it. There were different ways you could sponsor. Plus, there was the traditional routes, right? They were like SIVs coming through that would have come through, and then they would arrive and they go through resettlement agencies and they get benefits. And I guess, again, SIVs will still be coming. It'll just be smaller numbers. There's not as many coming in. So. Okay.
All right. So how would other veterans try to help with this refugee program, especially for yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So just so in terms of the work we're doing, there's a ton of big organizations out there. There's Afghan Evac. There is Operation Recovery. There's just a ton of veteran stuff. You can go out and do them. There's a ton. If you really want to do something, if you could do something for the movement, for the veterans that are watching, go out and watch a couple of those different the different documentaries that have come out. And if you're really interested to understand what like Abby Gate and stuff was, the British actually put one out, and I think it was called Evacuation. It's really good. Most organizations are looking for types of volunteers. So like Operation Recovery, like I said, Afghan Evac, Massachusetts Afghan Alliance is pretty local. So if you're in Massachusetts, John at massafghanalliance.org, we're a full 501c3 and we directly support Afghans in the community. We're not like we're really small. We have a really small board. We just got our 501c3 this year. But there are organizations out here looking, and I'm always around. So Steph can connect you too.
Yes. You can always find me because as a political veteran, you can Google me and find all the other things, and I can help you guys out. And I mean, honestly, for any veterans out there, they're also looking for, trying to do it in your local area as well. And it's not in Massachusetts or area. We could try to figure it out and help you out. So just reaching out can also help for a lot of people. Oh my goodness. So we still have some time left.
All right.
Do you have any good stories, I guess, for what's going on with the Afghan families right now?
Yeah, I'll give you something really quick. I like to, it's kind of tough time, so I'll say something positive. One of the things that I've really observed, and one of the things Mass Afghan really wants to do is support Afghan women. I think one of the things that sometimes people are, I don't know why, but people don't necessarily expect the same things out of refugees generally, not just Afghans, but these women, these amazing women from Afghanistan, and this is the reason my co-founder is an Afghan woman, they show up. And if they're not in school, they're like, how do I get into school? And if they're in high school, they're like, where am I going to college? And then if they're in college, they're like, where am I getting my master's degree? Oh, I want to work. And they're out there. And this is the reason this action was so important, because all of us knew that when the Taliban took over, that these amazing women that we've supported would not have the chance to blossom like that, or they wouldn't have the freedom to like expand out and do these things. And they're incredibly hardworking people. And I have seen just so many successful. And the other thing is always American babies. Afghan American babies are absolutely the best thing in the world. And since the evacuation, I've seen hundreds of them now. And all of that moral injury, which is still difficult, and the work we've done is still hard, has really paid off in that way. So just understand, all the veterans, Afghan vets, Iraq vets, that these people are well taken care of, and they're in your communities, and you just got to look for them.
Yep. Yeah, and I've been seeing an increase on different areas, especially for Afghan, even in Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
The population's actually bloomed in the last couple of years, which has been really amazing. And even a few churches I've seen that's been sponsoring families as well. So it's been really beautiful that's been happening. A little bit, I mean, guess down to the dark of what's going on for some of the families that's living in Afghanistan right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's brutal. So I think one of the things that I told you is we have these reunification families. So one of the families, they all have daughters. And so imagine being an Afghan man in the United States with your daughters overseas. And so a few months ago, I've had situations where the daughters show up to school one day and the entire school's getting arrested, and they were just late. And that's the only reason. Now, remember, the father's right down here, right? Like you're totally, you have no power. There's nothing you can do to help your family, and they almost get arrested. I've seen videos of families, murders in families, like people all of the worst stuff that the Taliban can do, and be like, this is my daughter lived and her cousin didn't make it. And they'll show the video. And so I think some of the thing is you got to kind of understand that it's real. I mean, we all went to war, right? It's all real stuff. So I think those are the darker things, is the people that are separated. I really have a hard time. You can't empathize, right? So you can sympathize, but they are hurting, and they tell you. And the kids, those teenage kids, we have a kid that's about to graduate high school, and he hasn't seen his mom since he was like 14. Like, man, could you even imagine? Like, I can't.
Right.
So it is exactly what you think it is there. The women get beat. There's sexual assaults. There's really, it is as ugly as you imagine. And I continuously communicate. I still have families that I help support in Afghanistan, SIVs, and women that I've supported in Pakistan. However, we now have to reevaluate how we're going to support them and how long we can, afford to. A lot of the money we use is volunteer monies, right? So we're funding these things ourselves, because our 501 operates here, right? So we have different job here. But yeah, it's as bad as you think it is.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Now there has been, I remember back when the Taliban was taking back over, and there was a lot of concern for those that have worked for the U.S. forces, the interpreters and their families and things. Were they also targeted by the Taliban when they were taking over?
Yeah. So our first group of families that we got out was 4 families of interpreters, and throughout the whole action, we had been moving them around, and they were chased. I mean, we had intel, we had live action OSIN intel that we had worked with, but they were absolutely on the run for their lives. The Taliban were trying to find them. They were trying to find anybody that really cooperated or helped arrest anybody. They went really hard after A&P. One of the things during evacuation, we helped a bunch of teachers because they started like really, really go after the teaching community. So overall, yeah, I think all of those people were targeted. The Taliban are exactly what you think they are. And they, as my Afghan friends and I like to say, we call them khars. So a khar is a donkey, and it is like the worst swear you can call somebody in Dari. So we call the Taliban khars, and I do not believe They will be in power forever. I think it will come back. I think the Afghans will come back. Go Afghans.
Yeah, 'cause there's only so much that a person or a people can take until it can, because empires don't last forever.
And they're educated and they have communication. This isn't the 1990s with no phones. Their families still talk to each other, right? So people at home know what's going on over there. And but at least they have that connection. And a lot of Afghans know they have the support of the veteran community, right? We're really vocal about it. There is probably not a refugee community that has had, other than the Vietnamese and the Vietnam generation, a group of people like this. And after the collapse of Afghanistan, just to finish that up, I found so much more empathy and just understanding of the Vietnam experience, right? I all of a sudden had something really, really visceral in common. And so they would probably get what I'm talking about.
Yes, I've heard that a lot. My mentor in this, especially on the advocacy side, is a Vietnam veteran era person, and she was a journalist at the time. And so there was a lot of things that she was like bringing back all of the stuff of the pullout from Vietnam, and it was just as bad. And the thing is that when the pullout of Afghanistan, and there was a lot of media, there was a lot of videos and cameras, everybody's got it on their phones. With Vietnam, it was so limited on the media that they could capture. And so everybody's attitude towards it could be a bit different from what's going on. So, oh my goodness. So we just got a message, at least for one of our background people, which will be a great question to ask.
All right.
I'd like to add this on there. So I know John can see it, so he's smiling already. So this one is, what do you tell young people that are thinking about signing up in the military today?
Here's what I say. I especially say that just try it. I'm a heat-seeking missile, man. I'll say, if you don't have a path, look, if you're going to go to college and you have a plan, like go with your plan, right? I think though, if you're curious and you want to try a different way, what the military has given to me was, I was a knucklehead, right? I was a young kid. I didn't really know much of anything. I thought I knew a lot of things, but what it really did was it grounded me, and it taught me to like care about other people and to work in a team and to understand that there's just a bigger world. Like I got to go to, I've been to like 13 countries. I got to stay in Europe. I was a reservist my whole career, and I went through, I did the jobs. I did all the jobs that I wanted to do. I met the people I wanted to meet. And then I was really fortunate. I know it sounds crazy, but I was really fortunate after the evacuation to make such incredible friends that I was able to reconnect. I mean, years after I had retired, right? So the people that you meet and the relationships that you build, and these people will really support you, right? These are the people that really are ride or die for you. Unlike a lot of civilian friends, right? It's a little bit different out there in the civilian world. You got
I can definitely sympathize with that, and yes, being the reservist as well. But I had a little bit of a different experience, mostly because I've only did my deployment to Kuwait. Did a little bit of traveling while we were there, but only a small amount. But the thing is that with my experience with the Army Reserve was that I also was able to go to 45 states out of the 50 states. Right. Did a lot of traveling for them and working at higher levels and working in places that you would never imagine you would be in, which was an amazing experience, doing things, because I don't think I've said it much on this show, but I've joked because I grew up in a Navy town, but I never wanted to end up on a ship. And then I ended up being on a ship anyways.
You did. You absolutely did.
Loading ships. And so it was still an amazing experience. Thank God I didn't have to live on them, but it's things that you could never get outside of the civilian world. And then learn so many different skills other than also just your MOS, because you learn so many other things, and it's just amazing.
You know, it's interesting. I met a Vietnam veteran the other day. I was just sitting next to him and we were just chatting about something. And I was like, you know what? We were talking the same thing, like the things that happen in the military that don't happen anywhere else. And this guy all of a sudden starts telling me about his time on an aircraft carrier. And he told me about climbing up that mast and like this light bulb. And he knew every detail he was on the Midway, right? And he knew every detail. Yeah. And at the end of it, he had this like big sigh and he goes, I haven't been able to tell a military story like that forever. And I got it because not just because I was on a ship, because I was in the military, and I understand that if somebody tells me at 3 a.m. to climb a stupid mast, I'm climbing up the mast, and then I get to tell that story for the rest of my life. But I think that's the thing about the military is it gave me stability. It gave me a foundation. If you're not disciplined, it gives you discipline. And I remain kind of undisciplined my whole career, but I learned how to manage it in a functional way and to affect positive change. And I think, and for people that do join the military, if you come out of this and you're like, that dude convinced me, a couple of things. Find a good NCO if you're enlisted. Find a good NCO if you're a lieutenant. Don't buy a car off the base, and take pictures of your friends because you never know when they're not going to be there. Because I've lost 5 friends. So, but it's all worth it. It was all worth it. So absolutely.
Oh yes. I never imagined you wouldn't even recognize me if you knew me from high school or middle school, because I would not be speaking. And the military did that for me, and sometimes cannot stop speaking now thanks to the military. But it's so many things that you didn't realize that you're going to actually run into and experience. So it's this wonderful plethora of things that can happen. God, the flashbacks of that time that you were there. So I'm sorry. But this is what happens when you join the military. You'll run into people, and then you'll hopefully catch up with them on social media, and also try to link up again and have these great experiences. And meeting them up again has always been an amazing, great thing, especially nowadays with the military, with social media. You could still get connected. There's many people from the previous generations of ours that are still trying to find people that they served with because of the lack of social media at the time. Absolutely. And so it can be very difficult. So it's going to be really great going on. And so we really hope that this doesn't discourage anybody from joining the military. We still encourage people to join if they can, when they can.
Hard stuff gives you character. That's the thing. When you get through the stuff in the military and you get in the civilian world and you hear somebody complaining about a milk fell on, a milk jug fell on the floor, you're like, just pick it up. Who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your milk jug or whatever the issue is, the small issue. But, and I'm going to say something really quick too, because I was at one point, you're saying you too, but we retired on the same. One of the things that I love post-military, post-retirement and seeing people is how successful you're being, right? To see Steph, which is weird to call you that, but to see you here, that gives me pride. That really is amazing to see that people have been successful and continue to move forward. And see all the people that you came up with. Now that I'm out, people that are now E8s, and some of them are warrant officers, and we're all part of their legacy, which is really the thing about the military, that your legacy does live on. There was some Roman doing a knife hand. And that's where it came from, 6,000 years ago, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's been an NCO thing for longer than any of us. So, but I'm glad that you're doing well, and to see you on the show, and the invitation to come here is great. And I can talk about this stuff anytime. And I can talk about my mental health journey if you want me to come back, and all those things. But keep supporting Afghans, and keep anybody out there, write some letters, especially Republicans right now. And this isn't a Democratic Republican thing. Afghan evac has never been partisan. We all work together. Republicans are the ones in power now, and we need really Republican veterans to start reaching out. They're the ones with influence, and I'm willing to work in their system and try the best I can, but we're going to need help to get the rest of the Afghans out for sure.
Can you pick a few Republican?
Mike Waltz. He's not Mike Waltz is the guy everybody's trying to get to the president. I forget what position he took, but he's the one closest to him. But any really Republican that's willing to listen, I think. What's the guy in Texas? There's a bunch. Crenshaw. There's a lot. You can just.
That's what I thought of.
Yeah. And and those people are still fighting for it. So we're trying to figure out so they can either loosen the strings or whatever, so we can get these 1660 out and then continue getting Afghans. We're trying to get a carve out.
But that is the end of the show. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe out there.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information,